Oh boy, this is dumb. If it goes, it's gonna be loud. Oh!
What did they do to this poor truck?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Between the Sharks. We are back at the ranch with our partially disassembled 1981 Datsun Nissan 720 four-wheel drive, manual 5-speed, pick 'em up truck that was abandoned right here on this property, left for at least 20 years. Let's get you up to speed. We found some valves that were not closing all the way, giving us zero compression on cylinder number 1 and cylinder number 4. Without compression, she ain't gonna run. Ain't going nowhere. If you did not see the last video, I highly recommend checking that out first. There's a link somewhere here. It is a riveting, emotional journey. And I want to say a particular thank you to Melvin B1490, who directly supported this video with a big super thanks. So the money he donated is going straight into the truck. Because the very beginning of this episode is going to get a little technical, I'm going to do a 30-second breakdown on how an internal combustion engine works so that we can all understand what we're trying to do here. Time me. So the pistons, no matter how many you have an airtight seal against the bore. Here's the top of the piston, and there is the smooth bore. Just like a bicycle pump or this siphon, as the piston goes down, it pulls air in, and as it goes up, it pushes air up. This cylinder head is upside down so we can see the actual valves. These are the valves. Valves do what valves do. They open and close, letting things pass or not pass. Even like a hose spigot or your faucet. All valves. So phase 1, the piston draws down, pulling air in. In order to pull air and gasoline in, the intake valve needs to open. So these are all 4-stroke engines. That's not as complicated as it sounds. A stroke is a movement of the piston from top to bottom or bottom to top. So the first stroke, the piston drops down, creating a vacuum, pulling in air and gasoline. Then it goes up, compressing said air and gasoline. Then the spark goes off with the compressed mixture, and the little explosion forces the piston right back down again. And that's what's actually driving your car. And then on the last stroke, the exhaust valve opens and it pushes all of the burnt, leftover, everything out of the exhaust. And it is now primed to start again, sucking in more air and gasoline on the intake stroke. So in order for all that to happen, your valves must open and close at the right time. On the intake stroke, the intake valve must open, let gasoline and air through, and then it must close so that it can be compressed. And then it is all closed when the spark goes off. There's the end of the spark plug right there, forcing the piston back. And then the exhaust valve opens so it can push all of the gas out of these little holes. And that just happens 1,000 times a minute. So in order for that to happen, the valves have to actually close. If you have a valve that sticks open, when the piston tries to compress the gasoline and air mixture, it just forces it back out of the open hole and never compresses it. Spark plug fires, but there's nothing in there to indeed fire. How'd I do? Was that under 30 seconds? Did it make sense? That's more important. I just want you guys to be able to follow along. So the first thing we've got to do with this cylinder head to figure out how to make it do again is figure out what valves aren't closing and what are leaking. These springs force the valves closed. This rocker assembly actually pushes down on the valve, which opens it up by pushing it out of its little seat right there. Because the rocker assembly is off, everything should be closed. This is as closed as it could possibly get. As closed can be. So we're gonna do a poor man's trick and just shine a light through every one of these intake ports and every one of these exhaust ports and figure out how many valves. I'm saying bent because that's the running theory, but let's just say how many valves are not seating, because there's a couple of other less likely things it could be, but we'll dive in and diagnose as we go. Right now we got to find out how many culprits we got, how many suspects. So we're gonna check the intake valves first. I'm using my Woobin X3. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I think these are killer. I use it all the time. So we're gonna take this thing and we're gonna lay it right there. And we are gonna look for light, and I can see it. There you go. There's a lot of light coming through. If I take the flashlight off, light goes away. So number 1 intake valve is leaking. We knew that already though. Let's check. I don't know if you guys can see this, but right there, number 2, the intake valve is also leaking. Number 3 looks okay, actually. It's the only one that had decent compression. 2 built compression, but I guess it could even be better if we fix this valve. And then number 4 had 0 compression. See all the way around it, actually. You can see it on my finger. 1, 2, and 4 intake are toast. We'll decide if we want to get into number 3 or not. That exhaust valve seems closed. Not seeing any light. No light. No light. No light. The problems appear to be all on the intake side. So I don't know much about these engines, but they claim they're non-interference engines, meaning if the valves are opening when the piston's supposed to be going up, on most engines, they can collide, which is why if your timing chain or belt slips or breaks, your piston will hit the valve, because it's the timing chain that keeps the valve timing and the piston timing in relationship, so that the valves are open when the piston's down, the valves are closed when the piston's up, so they don't crash into each other and cause chaos. What I've read about these things is they're not supposed to be able to do that under any circumstances, but as we looked at in the last episode, these little half crown marks definitely look like the piston has wanged something. I'm thinking we have bent valves. See how much it's wobbling? All right, so she's done. We have confirmed this thing is bent as hell. So hopefully our brandy new valves are gonna go in just fine, super easy. Never done this before, but it seems pretty simple. Put a little bit of this compound on the edge of the valve. Because it's brand new, I'm gonna go ahead and get the valve stem to give it a little Earl. All right, Houston, we still have a problem. So I guess I can continue to lap, but that light right there, right here, is actually coming in from this flashlight through the intake. I know the valve springs aren't holding it closed, but if I press it down, we're still letting light through significantly. I don't know if that means the valve seats are worn. I just don't know. I can try to lap it a little more. That's not gonna hurt anything. But bottom line is if light is getting through, compressed air is certainly going to get through, which is exactly what we don't want. I'm gonna put some soapy water in around the valve. I'm gonna use compressed air to go behind the valve, see if we see bubbles. I am getting some bubbles right there. Right here. I mean, I'm not seeing any light through. I'm gonna allow myself to pretend that maybe the compressed air was lifting the valve a little bit. I don't think that's really true, but I'm gonna pretend that it's true. Let's just do the other valves and see what's what. I'm not ready to give up, and I'm also not ready to spend $700 on a new head. Here we go. Think positive thoughts. Every one of these valves is bent. Look, I read that these are non-interference motors, and a lot of people have, said that they're non-interference motors. Maybe it's something else. And one guy got real mad about it. But, you do you, buddy. Nothing to get excited about. If I chalk it up in my NASA calibrated central machinery drill press, you can see all that wobble. Because when you ask, how could that have happened? Everybody just says, it can't happen. Non-interference motor. Well, it happened. So how did it happen? Somebody did something to them. They all seem to be marked at the same spot, essentially at the top edge here, the closest edge to the piston. Call Perry Mason, see if he'll talk to Sherlock Holmes and see if we can't figure this out. Oh, boy. All right, gang, a lot has happened since we were here last. It's only been a couple weeks, but basically the seasons have changed, so it's freezing in here. But this thing is a-glowing, so that is definitely making it more pleasant. But unfortunately, my timing chain doohickey did not do its job. This thing was supposed to hold the timing chain in place so that we didn't have to take the whole timing cover, pulley, distributor, oil pump, all that stuff off again. But we get to do that again. Well, despite the chaos, we've done the easy part, which is taking stuff apart again. We're back to where we were. This is what happened with the timing chain. As soon as it lost tension, it's dropped down well below the timing gear. The tensioner exploded. We're semi-pro. So the head bolts were loose when I originally did this, and I'm starting to wonder if that's just because that's going to be the easiest way to get the timing cover back on. So maybe they were like halfway done with the job? I don't really know. Forensically, I still don't understand most of what I've seen on this vehicle so far. I don't understand most of what I see on this vehicle in general. There we go. So considering the lack of cam bearings, we are going to put a lot of looby-dooby all over this. Plenty of it. Thank you guys for engaging so much in the comments. I do really appreciate it. I got a lot of helpful information, including answers to direct questions like, did these things really not have cam bearings? And I got a confirmation, which is pretty helpful, especially when you're dealing with brand new stuff. No replacement for experience. Experience comes from bad decisions. Drop this guy in. Give it a spin in there, make sure we're really greasing it up. We'll add more before we put the rocker assembly on. Like, you can't possibly have too much in a situation like this. Plenty of lube in there. You gotta be aware with these rocker assemblies, I think a lot of people have learned the hard way. If you take them off, but you take these bolts out, the two front or the two back, all of these springs go Unfortunately for me, that is one rookie mistake that I was able to avoid. This, right there, you can see the silver chain. Or the silver link. There's two. There's one here, there's one here. The spacing that you want is this many links apart between the cam gear and the timing gear on the crankshaft. All right, hopefully you guys can see the silver link and the little dot. Tighten that up, there we go. So the lower link is lined up, the upper link is lined up. Cam is straight up and down with two at the top position. The keyway is up and down. And that's how the timing chain needs to be set up on these engines as far as I understand. So here's the old tensioner with those grooves in there. They're at least 1/8 of an inch deep. So we're putting our new tensioner in. I'm gonna fill it with oil because it does get oil pressure on the back side. Right. I mean, every engine has its quirks, right? But this one, it's just a little bit strange to me because the timing cover sandwiches between the oil pan and the head. So the head gasket extends out here. The oil pan gasket used to extend to the front of the oil pan, but it is gone. It's in little pieces and stuff. So this whole bottom edge, which also has a broken bolt in it, we're just gonna pretend we didn't notice that, just needs to be sealed with RTV at this point, and then it sort of needs to be slid in there and then cinched down. She's gonna leak is what I'm saying. All right, does anybody have a good trick for RTV? This was brand new. Gotta be a better way. The caps never work. Not sure how I know that, because I don't think I've ever kept one for more than 38 seconds. But basically, I gotta put this whole engine back together with RTV. Scoop the whole bottom there with the RTV, so this thing is bound to leak like the Exxon Valdez. Fine, I mean, that's wishful thinking. That's assuming it's gonna run, you know what I'm saying? There's 20,000 tiny little bolts, and I gotta just shoehorn it in, and we're just gonna do it. Dang, it's dark and cold again. I don't... So if you watched the last video, which I highly recommend, that leads up to where we are, mid-fiasco now, I think I've got the engine about back together as far as I got it last time before we realized there was no compression, and then ultimately learned the valves were bent. There were no bolts on the header flange. So it's more suggestion that this motor came out at some point or was replaced. Well, that's the same thing now, isn't it there, Leroy? This motor has an interesting paint job, And the corrosion really, even with an oil leak, doesn't match the rest of this stuff. So I don't know what this engine came out of, but I do know, but it does seem that it is the Z2.2 as of that nameplate right there. 228784, don't know what that means. It was abandoned by Bubba's. A replaced motor doesn't necessarily mean anything good. However, we did get a look at the cylinder walls. They look pretty good. Pistons look okay. And my best theory on the bent valves is if it was completely out of time and somebody ran these adjusters all the way in, then maybe that was enough to push the valve out far enough to hit the piston. Because somebody was real angry in the comments about these being non-interference motors, so saying it's not possible. The guy at the machine shop said it is possible if they're out of time enough and the RPMs are high enough. I don't know. What I do know is those valves are bent. I just don't know how. So if you've got speculative theories, let's go. I love conjecture. It's great. Put it in the comments. Community. All right. So I'm really not in love with this idea, but I think I just have to RTV the intake on. I'm sure I can special order one. We don't live on special order timelines. You know what I'm saying? We live on RTV timelines. So it's getting late on a Friday night, and if you follow the channel a lot, this video is going to come out on Sunday. There's like, we're not ahead. We're barely getting by. But a big old attaboy to me, because we waited on parts for a week, and then we waited on parts for another week, and in all that time, I created a bunch of chaos. But guess what? Had every single one of those intake bolts. Can you believe it? I can't. Of course, I didn't check before I gooped everything up with the RTV. We're sneaking up on it. We're getting close enough to try to turn it over that I'm nervous. So I got to turn the engine to set the valve lash. It's a mind bender on these things. When you puzzle over it long enough, it's pretty obvious why. But the link that lines up with this timing mark will not line up with it again. Not for many, many, many rotations. From this timing mark to this timing mark down here is a certain amount of links, and there are way more links on the other side. So as it rotates, this is just the starting position. That's a little hard to wrap your head around when you deal with things like small block Chevys and stuff where the timing marks line up on the rotation. So if you can pop the timing cover off, eyeball the chain and the marks and go, huh, because the timing marks on the gears should always line up. Let's go ahead, we're gonna set it to 12 thousandths. It's supposed to be 12 thousandths hot, but it's gonna get us in the ballpark of hopefully compression. That'd be a big deal. So I'm back here looking for nuts so that I can put the exhaust collector back together. This is all stuff, well, this section here all came out of the cab, and I was looking through. These are head bolts, so means nothing definitive except they're spare head bolts, but the plot thickens. You know, what else was done in here? It's part of the slave cylinder.
What did they do to this poor truck?
The forensics aren't adding up to anything. I need one of those chalkboards that says, what does it all mean? And some string. So after like 28 trips to the nut repository, I found 2 that'll work. It's gonna be good enough for us. It's not like I have a gasket. The odds of this thing firing up to me are still like a, you know, half shoulder shrug. But if it does happen to fire off at some point, I would love to be able to hear it when it goes full rud. We're gonna go ahead and reuse these exhaust gaskets because I feel like the sloppier job we do, the better chance we have to make it run. Like, if we spend a lot of time doing it real good, it'll never run. But if we're sloppy and we have to go back and redo everything, it might just run. So we're gonna go with automotive Murphy's Law. So we got a situation here where when we hook up the tailpipe collector to the exhaust manifold, I can't get the manifold on. When I put the manifold on, I can't connect the thing. So I don't know if the cars had slightly different manifold or exhaust setups, or I'm speculating that this may not be the original engine, and if it came out of a car or something like that, then could there be small misalignment issues? Is that why it was never hooked up? Not really sure how to solve it, but at the same time, I don't want to try to fire this up with open headers. Guess we're gonna go spelunking. The exhaust seems remarkably complete, so I'd hate to cut it up. All right, now I kind of have one of the collector bolts in there, like kind of. All right, so this manifold is somewhat attached. Well, it's attached to the block, The collector on the exhaust pipe does not match the collector and flange on the exhaust manifold. Further evidence that this engine not only was not originally in this truck, also that they did not complete the job of the engine swap. It looked factory-ish to me. The little clips and doodads, all the stuff that I'm never gonna get back together, was all together on this engine when I started. Who knows what Frankensteinery has been going on in here. Is that? All right. So I broke the rotor, got a new one of those. This dual spark plug thing is crazy. Internet says these things don't need a lot of timing because they're dual plugs, so I got to, it's crazy how big the rotor contact is though. That's number one with this line coming down on the ignition side of the spark plug, so I guess that's where we start. Does it fire when it's centered? Does it fire when it first makes contact? Cylinder number one. So I got a deep, dark pit growing in my gut. I don't know why. It's been quite a journey and many hours of work. But as I'm reassembling this, I think I'm just seeing more and more that suggests bubbification. I'm nervous is what I'm saying, gang. I'm nervous. I got the battery hooked up. So this may be a dumb step. We might just not want to know. Go straight for the jugular and try to get it started. Our super weak battery is hooked up. Compression tester's hooked up to number one. Want to barf. It definitely sounds more compressy-y. 90. Is it good enough? Do we care? Do we care? Sure. Perfect. 90. All right, let's give number 4 a whirl. That was also at 0 previously. There's so much sketchy wiring. Everywhere I look, it just gets sketchier. Oh, boy, howdy. 30 PSI. Not sure what to say about that. We pretty much have no compression on cylinder number 4 still. Spin it over, triple check. All right, both valves. Oh, they're not too tight. What do we do? Dang it. Well, considering we're pretty much sunk already, may as well check the other 2 cylinders. Well, hot tamale. Bam. Instant. I mean, I'll let it run on 3 cylinders if I can. I'm not even kidding you. Having never lapped valves before, maybe I didn't get it totally right, or maybe the seats or seals were damaged, and I don't have my air compressor over here, so I can't do the same test I did before to see where it's leaking. 90. I'm inclined to say, hey, let's see if it'll fire off on 2.5, 3 cylinders. What do we have to lose, really? So, not gonna lie to you guys, I'm pretty disappointed right now. It could have been me and the valve lapping job, and it could have been that the valve seats were damaged when the valves were bent. It's better, but it's not good enough, I don't think. Let's see if we can hotwire this thing and see if we have spark. Throw a bunch of fuel down the app and just see if it'll deafen us out of this basically open header, right? Why not? Let's go ahead and pop this guy out. Maybe if I take this screw out, I can pull this out, pull the tumbler out, and then we can just use a screwdriver. Come on, nobody. Interesting. As I can't find nothing, but clearly none of my tools are in the tool case, which means they should be somewhere right in front of me. I can't even find a flathead screwdriver. I know I had one right over here, trying to jam open the carburetor machine. Excellent news, everyone. So, lock off accessory on start. This thing came right out the back there. So I can go all the way to this way. Lock, off, accessory, on, start. All right, this thing is our new switch. Let's do a smoke test with our new key device. Because now we can kind of turn it on. Turn it to the on position. This thing's really neat, man. All right. Lock, off, on, start. Huh. Not getting anything. Oh boy. All right, so I got a bad feeling that this fire starter situation is what's supposed to be connecting to the whole main system. There's nothing hanging out by the starter. We're doing some forensics here. I don't know. We don't have anything from the key, like nothing at all. We have no headlights, even though the battery's connected right now. So I'm trying to understand. It's really dumb, but you know, whatever. All right, let's see what that does. Try headlights maybe? Is that headlights? I don't even know. Oh! Whoa! 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 Ah! Did they just go out? One did. Okay. Is it on fire? It sounded like a pop in here, actually. I don't know if the brights just went off or what's going on. All right, we got our key. Let's see what happens. Go from lock, off, accessory. Ha-ha! All right, got the #1 plug wire kind of resting right here. We're gonna do a poor man's spark test. I don't have any of that testing stuff here. Make sure the distributor cap's on, which it's apparently not. This is a crazy ignition system. I have no idea where the timing is. I tried to guess getting it pretty close to 0, but I guess we need to find out if we have spark before we even think that we're gonna get this to fire over on 2.5 cylinders. All right, in theory the ignition's on. So if we turn it over, hopefully we see a spark. Where's my little guy? Little guy. No spark. One more time. Tiny, weak spark. So I found a thing on the internet and I translated it to this, but I was gonna start searching out whether we had power to the coils. Looks like there's no fuse for the coils in here right now. So if the diagram for the 85 is the same as the 81, I can nab one of those light fuses and jam it in here and we'll try again. All right, we got 12 volts to the coil, to both coils. All right, let's try again. All right, hopefully we'll get a spark right in here somewhere. Still not seeing it. Dang it. But I think I'm at the point where I should just throw some fuel down the app and just make sure I'm wrong. Now we got low compression, a couple cylinders, and don't know what the timing is, but maybe it'll just burn this thing to the ground and we can be done with it. I mean, let's just do it. I don't think we'll be filling the balls. I don't think there's gonna be. Guess we can try. Going down the vents here. It's like an Uncle Tony amount. There is a fire extinguisher standing by. Oh boy, this is dumb. If it goes, it's gonna be loud. Oh! That was a lot of work to just. We could have just ignored that and just tried to fire it off. It ran for 2 seconds. And doodads, 20 years this thing has been sitting, partially disassembled, we ultimately found out, and it just barked off. I can't believe it just fired up. All right, let's just jam this valve cover kind of back on there. I think if this thing starts to run, it is likely that it would fling oil off that timing chain in every direction. I'm pretty excited about it. It's awesome. Awesome. All right. Whew, whew, whew. Come on. Whoa! I mean, I don't know what the ignition timing actually is, so we probably shouldn't go any further until I get a timing light. But as crazy as this is, I think that's our victory. I don't know. I don't know if the compression will come around if we get it to run. I don't want to blow it up, but it's running. Like, the engine's firing. So We took that measly bit of success and rode that glory train all the way to the hamburger stand. Just let it soak in for a while, because it may just get worse from here. All right, this is starting to look very Griswoldian. Here we go again. Fire the hole. So whatever that RPM was, we were firing after top dead center. This seems to spin counterclockwise. If I spin it clockwise, that should advance everything. See what happens. It's too advanced. Let's rock it back just a fuzz. Try again. Alright, let's tighten that down. Sounds really aggressive. I have no idea. I'm gonna try to watch the RPM on this thing. Just, it's serious. We can bottle feed it a little bit. It's rolling right up to 1500 RPM, which is, it's running though. Here's the deal. Here we go. Let's see if we can just get it to run for just a couple seconds by bottle feeding it, and then... Yep. Running. Dang! It's a little smoky in here, gang. That's because it's running. Ha-ha! Well, gang, for the time being, I'm willing to just put some blinders on. I really don't think that was running on only 2 cylinders, and I don't really want to check the compression again and defeat our little victory. It did run, bottle feeding it, it ran right up to like 1600 RPM, which does make it a lot harder to hear a miss, but it wasn't shaking like crazy. Engine wasn't rocking all around. All of the things that when you're running on half of your cylinders tend to happen. I like to think that this thing is coming around or fixing itself right now. The victory is this thing was parked just outside this garage for almost 2 decades, and it does not seem like it was running when it was put out to pasture. It was semi-assembled. Well, it's here now. It's actually running. This is an engine I knew nothing about before I started diving into it, so I got to learn some stuff, and I feel like, you know, hey, brand new engine, lapped in some valves, never done that before, put it all back together, and it's running. I mean, I'm just a regular dude like you guys out there watching. I'm not certified to do anything. Well, that's not entirely true. When I was a Webelow Scout, I got a totem chip. Probably expired by now, though. So at this point, I kind of want to ignore those compression numbers. Don't even want to recheck it. It ran, and it seemed to be running on 4 cylinders, not just 2. If you guys heard something different, well, then that's, I don't know. Put it in the comments, but I'm going to take this as a victory. I'm inclined to get a carb kit, get the radiator out of the bed, and see if I can put this thing back together, put the water pump on it. I mean, the whole front of the motor is still pretty much disassembled. But once we get it there, we can see if we can get this thing tuned in. I mean, it fired up and ran on ancient spark plugs, old cap, bubbled up wiring, this ridiculousness, and it still barks off like that. I think this engine has potential. We can get it up and we can get it running. That'll justify getting into the clutch, that'll justify getting into the brakes, that'll justify getting into fuel tank and all the other stuff that this thing is going to need. But when we turn the key, it comes to life. I can't believe it. This is an emotional roller coaster, man. I mean, when I saw those compression numbers, my heart just sank. When I saw no spark, my heart sank even further. And yet, pour some fuel down the yap and it wants to come to life. So I really appreciate you guys watching and supporting the channel. Also, with the encouragement of some of you folks out there, I am going to start doing the membership thing. If you guys want to support the channel even further, Thank you for watching. As always, good luck on your projects out there. I'd love to hear in the comments where you think we go from here. I'm thinking we try to get this engine actually running, which is going to be quite a journey, really, because we've got to get, it's got to get back together, but I also feel like part of that journey is going to be building some custom exhaust. Man, I thought this ship had sunk. Maybe the Z stands for zombie. It's back from the dead, living again. All right, I gotta ungriswold this thing. All right, some of you guys can probably do this stuff in your sleep, but to me, this is like 2 steps short of a Christmas miracle. I was sure we had failed entirely, twice today. Good luck on your projects out there, and we will see you next time on Between the Sharks. Man, oh man, that's worthy of like 2 or 3 attaboys, I think. All right, see you next time.